Good evening. Beautiful North Texas night. Nightcap time with the fish. Mike Fisher in Frisco, home of the Dallas Cowboys, right down the street. Two of the most common questions that I get asked by you guys, and it's young and old, and it's men and women, and it's comes up all the time, and I'm really proud of it in a way. I'm proud of how often you ask me, Fish, how did you get your job, and how can I get one just like it? It really, and I mean it. It's flattering, except for the part where I have a feeling that what some of you are really saying is, Fish, how did you get that job? But which, if you say it that way, doesn't sound so sweet. And then the other one is, Fish, and I know Brian Broadus gets these questions a lot too, my colleague, and my very, very good friend, even though he treats me so mean on the radio. How do you get to work for the Cowboys? How do you get to be a scout? How do you get to... I'm going to take it a level above that. In fact, I'm going to take it a bunch of levels above that, and then we'll roll back down. How do you get to be a head coach in the NFL or a general manager in the NFL? We've discussed before here evidence that it's something short of a meritocracy. And now we're seeing that again. We basically broke the story that Dan Campbell was going to be the Lions head coach. We wrote a week ago and said a week ago that he was the favorite for the job. And now that's going to happen. And we know Dan Campbell a little bit. He's an Aggie. He's a Cowboy. He's a Texan. And if you know Dan, you root for Dan. It's a great thing for him. And it's not. There's no disrespect directed at him because he got a head coaching job. There's only 32 of them. However you get it, you scramble your ass off. Go get it, and go kick some butt in Detroit. Detroit, the Lions have finished last in that division for 3 straight years. Bad program. It is absolutely in Detroit a program where, try as they might, because obviously, the other coaches that have come through there aren't. It's not like they're not putting in the time, but that is one of those 9 to 5 teams. Guys show up, they punch the clock, they do their job, and then they go home. They are absolutely, again, I'm not making fun of football players or coaches and their work ethic. Don't get me wrong, but relative to what's done elsewhere, the Lions are just one of those teams. Jacksonville is just one of those teams where it's kind of... your next question, of course, is what about Dallas? What about the Cowboys? Well, we'll do that another day. We hope that the Cowboys don't quite qualify in that same way. So let's do Dan Campbell. He's 44. He's never been a coordinator. He's never called plays. He's never really run his own squad. Now, a few years ago, when Joe Philbin got fired in Miami, Dan Campbell was on that staff, and he got to be the interim head coach of the Dolphins for 12 games and went 5-7. So he's got that experience. But what does Dan Campbell really have? He is a run-through-the-wall-for-him kind of guy. That's what Dan Campbell really has. Because if you're his teammate, he'll run through a wall for you. I bet you that if he's your coach, he'll run through a wall for you. And the idea now is that you'll do it for him as a player. That's fine. He won't be in charge of, he's not the general manager. Surely he won't be in charge of personnel. But how did he leapfrog ahead of guys? He wasn't on the hot list, Dan Campbell. How did he get ahead of Eric Bieniemy? How is he better than Brian Dable? I mean, he's not. He can't. You can't make an argument. You can't sit in front of an owner and make an argument that Dan Campbell is more qualified to be a head coach than Eric Bieniemy or Brian Daboll. Daboll, who, by the way, announced that he's turning down jobs. He's not going to take this job or that job, which, by the way, you know what that really means is he wasn't offered those jobs. Somebody else is getting those jobs. Somebody else is getting the Philadelphia job, not him. Josh McDaniels. The deal, by the way, in the Patriots organization is guys now want to get out of there because guys who aspire to be head coaches want to get out of there. No offense to Big Bill, because they've learned what we talked about here a few weeks ago. Bill Belichick's plan is for his son Steve to be the next head coach there. I know it's weird. I mean, he's just the coach. He's not a king, but there, he's the king, and then so the prince gets to be the king someday. That's the Belichick plan. Dan doesn't have qualifications on the same level as those guys. Dan's not as qualified as Kellen Moore is. Detroit didn't even interview Kellen Moore. I don't think Detroit interviewed Leslie Frazier and a whole bunch of other guys who have more credentials than he has. But here's what happened. And again, I'm not saying this to insult anybody. I'm just telling you the facts. You want to know how to get up there? This is the tough facts. The Lions ownership have a couple former players who are advisors to them. One of them's Barry Sanders. Now, I don't know if that's a PR move in Detroit, but if it is, good. It's a good PR move. Another one is Chris Spielman. Good player. Chris Spielman is way closer to being a trusted advisor to the Ford family than anybody else is. They decided they were going to listen to Chris Spielman, and that's fine. I don't have his resume in front of me. Has Chris Spielman ever been a general manager? I don't believe he has. Has he ever been a head coach? I don't believe he has. His brother helps run the Vikings, which is why I thought, by the way, I thought that the next general manager of the Lions would be Patton. Is that what his name is? Who ended up the general manager in Denver. Why? Because I thought the Viking Spielman would tell the Lions, Spielman, Chris, you should hire Patton to be your general manager. And then Chris, you know who you should tell him to hire? And again, Chris Spielman does not own the Lions. He's not the general manager. What he is a musclehead. And again, that's a good thing. Listen, I'm jacked. I got no problem with the musclehead. Chris Spielman's a musclehead. Guess what Dan Campbell is? Is this racial? I hesitate. I don't want to say it's racist. Is it racial? Is it comfortability, which sounds kind of racist? What I'm told is that Chris Spielman's strong recommendation was Dan Campbell. Maybe based entirely on his credentials, except he doesn't really have credentials. Except that if the Lions decided that we need one thing only, run through the wall guy. We don't need somebody who's really been a head coach. We don't need somebody who's been a coordinator. We don't need somebody who's been a play caller. We don't need somebody who's a genius. We need a run through the wall guy. But maybe there was other there were. Robert Saleh is a run through the wall guy who's actually been a coordinator, who's actually called plays. Why did the Ford family choose Spielman as its key advisor over Barry Sanders? And why did Spielman, according to my sources, tell the Ford family, I strongly recommend Dan Campbell? Now, we can go way down the racial rabbit hole here. And Maybe as it's Martin Luther King Day, maybe it's a very appropriate thing to do, or maybe it's not appropriate at all. We can all decide that together. But when African American coach candidates and general manager candidates are wondering why not me, I just told you why not. And again, not an insult to Dan Campbell, it's just a fact. It's a happy fact for Dan Campbell. It's not so happy if you're not friends with Chris Spielman. If you don't see eye to eye with Chris Spielman, you weren't going to get that job. Now, we are going to see in Houston, I'm predicting, I think it's going to come down to, and Matt Eberflus is a viable candidate there. In Houston, I think it's going to come down to Leslie Frazier versus Eric Bieniemy. Why? Well, their locker room is about ready to revolt, because their locker room, who's led by a very charismatic, very bright, very talented, high-quality person in Deshaun Watson, was lied to. And that ownership and that management team isn't very bright. The only smart thing about the people that run the Texans is Jack Easterby is very clever. Not in football, just in other stuff. He's clever in terms of his ability to survive as a football executive who doesn't know anything about football. It's really quite amazing. 75% of an NFL team's locker room is African American. Once you've lied to them, how do you get them to believe you again? Maybe it would be wise to listen to them. And Deshaun Watson, one of his leading candidates that he was going to recommend or did recommend was Eric Bieniemy. Might be wise to listen. Why Leslie Frazier? Is it because he's African American? Sure, but there's something else. Leslie Frazier, on Bob LaMonte's list of clients, the super agent, there's very few African American men on it, for whatever reason, but Leslie Frazier's on it. That's why Leslie Frazier is a finalist in Houston. His record as a head coach is bad. The owner said he wants a run through the wall kind of guy. Leslie Frazier's not that. He's a very soft-spoken, very sweet, very, very capable defensive coordinator, obviously working in Buffalo now, but he doesn't make you run through a wall. Of those four types of coaches that we've talked about, let me see if I can remember them. Drill sergeant dictator, professor, lovable uncle, pal, ball guy pal. He's professor. He's not a drill sergeant. But he's a candidate there because his agent is telling the Texans he's a candidate. And again, in addition to whatever else great aspects that he brings to the table. Why isn't Wink Martindale getting an interview? All he is the Ravens defensive coordinator, and they've been like the number one defense for 4 straight years or close to it. Now, this one doesn't have anything to do with black or white. I'm willing to bet that Wink Martindale doesn't have CAA representing him, doesn't have Bob LaMonte representing him, and isn't super media guy. Again, I don't know Wink Martindale. If you don't have one of those three things, you're not going to make it. That's the answer to your question. Fish, how do I get to be an NFL coach? Well, you better be connected. And if you really want to climb, you better be connected in one of three ways. You better be represented by CAA, you better be represented by Bob LaMonte, or you better be super media guy. Bob LaMonte, what are there, 7 openings? Bob LaMonte is running the Texans opening. He's running or help run the Chargers. He's helped running the Eagles. I don't think he had anything to do with the Jaguars. involved with the Lions. Get the idea? I don't know about the Falcons. The ones that he didn't do, CAA probably did. I was listening to 105.3 The Fan on Monday, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, so I hope I heard it right. But the boys on KNC Masterpiece were kind of talking about how, the Cowboys in their organization, scouting organization, they really don't have anybody. I hope I'm paraphrasing this right. They really don't have anybody besides Will McClay, who can build the board. And even before Will McClay, they didn't know how to build a board. And they were probably exaggerating or joking or something, because that's not true. Will McClay didn't invent building a board. And listen, I'm a fan and friend of Will McClay. He's extremely valuable here. First of all, as a personnel guy, but more than that, as a unifier, as the hub of a wheel that has spokes going to the owners, spokes going to the scouting department, spokes going to the locker room, and spokes going to the coaching staff. And Will McClay keeps it all together. He's a very gifted man and an outstanding personnel guy. But he didn't invent this. Tom Siskowski was here before, and of course worked at the same time here with Will. Do you think Tom Siskowski didn't know how to build a board? Jeff Ireland was here and crossed with him, and Jeff Ireland. Think Jeff Ireland didn't know how to build a board? That's silly. What it is you've heard of Will McClay. That's the difference. Whereas if most fans haven't heard of Tom Siskowski. Haven't heard of him. Walt Juliff was a top scout here for, 30 years. Now he's gone to the Raiders. You don't know that he came. You don't know that he was here, and you don't know that he left. And again, if you're a talk show host and you're doing Rangers, 100,000 things, nobody expects you to know who the Cowboys Eastern Regional Scout is. But let's not say that he doesn't know how to build a draft board. Cowboys have very capable people in the scouting department, and then they're still going to get some right and get some wrong. But how you get there is in part not only how good you are, but who you know. If you want to get into scouting, and a lot of our friends, media friends, have done a good job in this. You get with Broadus. I hate to put it all on him, but boy, if you could go have a beer with Broadus, I think you'd learn a lot about scouting there, sitting there for 2 hours. But it's still going to be who you know. And finally, in journalism, on this theme, because I think we've illustrated by now in coaching and in scouting and in general manager. Did you go to John Carroll College? Because if you did, you got a chance to be in the NFL. Because that means you were friends with Nick Cesario, and it means you went to this school prom with Josh McDaniel, on and on and on. Are you from Northern New York? Because if you're from Northern New York and you went, it's a really weird web. If you're connected with Belichick and represented by Bob LaMonte, it's not only a web, it's a spider web. Again, that's how Jack Easterby keeps his job. He does not keep his job because he's good at football, or because he's a good administrator, or because he's a good accountant, or a scout, or a coach. He's in the web. He weaved his way into the web. The beauty of sports media, I'm glad that I get to come out on the purist side of all this. The beauty of sports media, I want to be in Media Fish, is you're doing it. We're doing it. You want to be on TV? Be on TV. This is a TV. You want to be on radio? Do a podcast. It's easy. You want to write? Get on Facebook and write. If you go to my Facebook page, Fish Sports, and you want to write something, write to your heart's content, and I'll read it. You can do the same thing here, obviously, on YouTube. Got something to say? Say it. The downside to this is now that everybody's a sports writer, nobody's an editor. So people say the most preposterous things, and they don't have an editor to say, no, 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 pull that back a little bit. People don't worry about spelling and punctuation, and there's not an editor to say, I'm not publishing that. But the beauty of media now is you can take a class online. You can copy what we do here. This is the master's class in journalism. You can be on TV. You can be on the radio. You can be in print. Unfortunately, getting into football is a lot harder. But getting into football, as you're learning here, if you're paying attention, is also a lot dirtier. Thank you for subscribing to what we do here. We really appreciate it. We are closing in now on 20,000 of us. The Des Bryant hoodie, donated to the cause by Des Bryant himself, will belong to somebody here very shortly. I will keep you posted on that. Cowboys coaching stuff. They are still working on some things as they put together the defensive staff. Kellen Moore, the deal's not done in Philadelphia yet for somebody else, so until it is, Kellen Moore remains a candidate of sorts there. Interesting tidbit that you can find on CowboysSI.com. Dan Quinn, coming to Dallas, of course, to be the defensive coordinator, was a strong candidate to go with Urban Meyer to be on his coaching staff in Jacksonville. So, way to go, Joneses and McCarthy. You poached one from the poacher, Urban Meyer. Thanks for watching. Fish out.